What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Okay, man. Getting ready for these fights this weekend. Going to talk about Mikey Garcia, Robert Easter, and also Lucas Brown, not Lucas Brown, what's this guy's name? Dillian Whyte and Joseph Parker. Now, in doing this, man, I'm looking through my weekend and seeing which fights am I going to watch, trying to get my schedule together. And then I realized, man, that I'd known it before, but it just dawned on me again that Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker is a pay-per-view event. Now, they have undercards on this. My understanding is that it's Katie Taylor versus Kimberly Connor, and also Derek Chisora versus Carlos Takam. And the other fight, and then it is what's his name? Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker. Not a single championship belt on the line at all. And it's a pay-per-view event for people in the UK. And I went back and I looked at all of the pay-per-view events that are taking place in the UK. And I'm like, God, dude, these guys got a lot of pay-per-view events for fights that would never be pay-per-view in the United States. There is no way that Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker with an undercard of Katie Taylor, Kimberly Connor, Derek Chisora, and Carlos Takam would be pay-per-view for any price. And I don't know if the networks would even try to put that off on you, even HBO. The only pay-per-view events that are happening in the United States this year I think the only one scheduled that I know of is Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin. And maybe if Canelo Alvarez fights again in December, if he gets another one in December, then maybe there'll be two pay-per-view events in the United States all year. And that's a good thing. It's not as if that means there's not a lot of good fights that are happening, because if you look at the fights that have taken place this year in the United States, they've been great fights. Just this weekend, you get a unification fight between two undefeated fighters in Mikey Garcia and Robert Easter. You get Luis Ortiz. You get a top 10 heavyweight in Luis Ortiz. And you get a decent fight, kind of, guys that are coming back at it, but a decent fight in Andre Berto versus Devin Alexander. And the fight, if you are subscribed to Showtime, if you prorate what you're paying for that, like compared to all the other programming and all the other fights, over the course of a year, the entire subscription is $150 for all of Showtime. So what would you allot to that particular fight? Maybe $5 at the most. At the most, probably more like $1.50. But it's no additional cost to you. But Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker is pay-per-view. I also believe that it's not just Joseph Parker and Dillian Whyte. Carl Frampton's last fight was pay-per-view in the UK. Kell Brook versus Errol Spence Jr. was pay-per-view in the UK. Now, I'm a biggest fan of the world of Errol Spence Jr. But Errol Spence Jr. and Kell Brook is not at that particular point in time was not a pay-per-view fight. The value, and this is what happens when you have a lot of casual fans that start supporting boxing, and you have like the UK market because of not just because Anthony Joshua, or I guess, Sky Sports push towards boxing, and the fact that there's a lot of very good, solid boxing fans in the UK has really become a place where promoters are starting to gouge boxing fans. They're trying to get, at a certain point though, they're going to wind up starting to try to get water out of a rock. Why in the world would I pay? Was it $20 or something like that? $25 pay-per-view. I know that's a lot lower than it is in the United States, but why would I pay that much money to see Dillian Whyte fight Joseph Parker? Dillian Whyte, despite the attempt by Eddie Hearn to to say that he's a dramatic course upward, he's a rising star in the heavyweight division. He's a guy that just beat Lucas Brown, Malcolm Tan, and Robert Helenius. He's a C-plus level heavyweight at best, fighting a guy coming off of a loss and really a guy that should have been coming off of 2 losses. Though I'm going to watch the fight, the main reason that I'm going to watch the fight is because it's going to be on paper, because it's not going to cost me anything more than my regular cable bill to watch it. So, I mean, just as I see this, see this whole Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder thing coming, where I would hear over and over again that, no, Deontay Wilder hasn't even been on pay-per-view. Deontay Wilder hasn't even been on pay-per-view. When's Deontay Wilder going to get on pay-per-view? When's Deontay Wilder going to get on pay-per-view? And my first reaction to that is, what do you care? Why do you want me to have to pay more money to see Deontay Wilder before Deontay Wilder is considered to be a legitimate champion? What is the connection between how much money you have to pay to see somebody fight and the value of watching them fight? It's almost as if you assume that the value associated with a fight is dependent upon how much money they charge you to watch it. And that's just not the case. It's just not the case. And if that is the case, then woe is you. Because all that means is they just got to charge you more and more money, and then the more and more money to see it, and then the price in and of itself makes it a mega fight. That's not the way that it should go. That's not the way that it should go in boxing. If you have a great fight that is a great product, then I think it is fair to charge extra money for it. But to just charge extra money for whatever fights you put on, that's gouging. That's price gouging. That's similar to the secondary ticket market scheme that goes on, right? Where you immediately release a bunch of tickets to some secondary vendor and then resell it at inflated prices, never having really given the end consumer the opportunity to buy it in the first place, but just artificially inflating the value. I mean, there's other mechanisms the way that people artificially inflate value. Artificially inflating the value through a pound for pound ranking, in my mind, is artificially inflating the value. And it seems like that is what the job of the promoter is to artificially, in many ways, to the extent that they can, artificially inflate the value of a boxing match. I don't want as much success as I wish upon Deontay Wilder. I don't wish so much success on Deontay Wilder that I have to start paying 5 times as much money to see him fight for fighting fights that I know that he can win. I don't want to necessarily see that. What I wanted to see was Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder for the unification of the heavyweight division. And I would be willing to pay for that. If I had to pay $100 to watch Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight on pay-per-view, I would pay the money for that. Because I think that fight is important enough because it is a unification of the heavyweight division. I'm not just going to pay for it just because they put Dillian Whyte. I'm not going to pay a pay-per-view price for Luis Ortiz versus Big Baby Miller. Because that's in essence what people in the UK are paying pay-per-view for in this fight. At the same time, on the same weekend, I get to see Mikey Garcia and Robert Easter Jr. and Victor Ortiz and Andre Berto and Devin Alexander all on the same card, and I don't have to pay any extra money. The value proposition, even if you made the argument that one card was better than the other, even if you believe for some reason that Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker is worth more, is a more valuable fight than a title unification fight between two undefeated fighters in Robert Easter Jr. and Mikey Garcia, even if you said that value proposition was more for Dillian Whyte and Joseph Parker, is it that much more? Is it 10 times as valuable? But look, I'm not going to have to know because I don't have to pay for Dillian Whyte, but people in the UK have to pay for that to watch it. Unless I guess they find some local stream, they can do that. But look, promoters, one of the things that I do on this video is I talk about, promoters and like how I am just 100% convinced. And I think most people who are reasonable understand that Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn didn't want to make that Deontay Wilder-Anthony Joshua fight. That they didn't want to make it. And I'm on them about that. But even that is a question of providing value to as a boxing fan. The unification of any weight division is an important thing because in boxing, your Super Bowl or your World Cup or your NBA championship is a title, a unified title. It's something that should be very, very hard to achieve because you have all of these boxers in the same weight division from all over the world vying and competing to get there. It's bad enough that you've already got that split in 4, right? Where you have split in 4 and as a consequence of having it split in 4, even more dependent upon the income of promoters and the influence of promoters. That's bad enough. But when they won't come together and fight when they have the opportunity, and then they want to charge you extra money for not doing it, that's just when it goes too far. Dillian Whyte, I feel for the hardcore boxing fans in the UK to be put in a situation to where if they want to see a good boxing match, and I do believe that Joseph Parker and Dillian Whyte is a good boxing match. It's a fight that I'm going to watch. It's just not a fight that I'm going to pay for. I'm already paying for it because I got to get an internet bill. I can't pay for it through pay-per-view because I'm not in the UK. But if I was in the UK as a hardcore boxing fan and somebody that watches fights week in, week out, that type of price gouging, I would not be happy about at all. And it's not as if they're not doing it on a regular basis. Of the pay-per-view fights that I see that I know of happening on Sky Sports last year, I believe there were 6. So that's a pay-per-view every other month coming off of Sky Sports. I believe this year they're going to wind up with 6 pay-per-view, at least that I know of, 6 pay-per-view events. Because there's the 2 Anthony Joshua ones, there's 2 Anthony Joshua ones, there's this Dillian Whyte one, right? There was Tony Bellew, David Haye, and those are just the ones that I know off the top of my head. I wouldn't be surprised if there's several more. In the United States, we're not doing that. In the United States, there's only one pay-per-view happening this year that I know of. There would have been 2. Canelo Alvarez in May and Canelo Alvarez in September on Mexican holidays. But other than that, there haven't been any. So the logic of saying that Deontay Wilder is not, nobody knows him because he's not on pay-per-view, man, that would mean that no boxer in the United States right now is known because none of them are on pay-per-view with the exception of Canelo Alvarez. And even the people that Canelo Alvarez fights is not on pay-per-view if they're not fighting Canelo Alvarez. Gennady Golovkin, they tried to do that stuff with Gennady Golovkin, right? But now where they gave him a couple pay-per-views that just, HBO used to do that, where they would just throw people on pay-per-view and just all they did is have to make their minimum amount of money, right? They would put anybody on pay-per-view. Just say, put them on there. As long as they get 75,000 pay-per-view buys, we break even. It's not on our cost. But you see where that's taken HBO boxing. But anyway, it is what it is, man. I just don't understand people that brag about having to pay too much for fights that aren't, paying that much money for fights that aren't worth it, having the pleasure of going to sit in nosebleed seats in a soccer stadium to watch a boxing match in a in a squared circle that you really can't see very well from more than 30 yards. I mean, after you get outside of 30 yards, you're not seeing the detail in that fight any better than you're seeing it on TV. You do get to see the sounds. You do get to take or maybe 100 yards. Anything past 100 yards, though, you're tripping. And if you're at the top nosebleed seat in Wembley Stadium, you ain't seeing it. You watching that fight on a jumbotron. Anyway, it is what it is, and with that, I'm out. Peace.